Hey guys, July 23rd, 2010, I got an article from Zero Hedge I'd like to read to you. And this, again, is from BP. It's an issue with BP. And I hate to belabor the point, but when I hear articles talking about what's really going on, I want to share them with you. And the title of this is Matt Simmons says Gulf cleanup will cost over $1 trillion. And it says also that he's going to short BP stock down to $1. I'm just going to summarize the first paragraph. It says basically he thinks that the mainstream media is throwing sand in the eyes of the public on what's really happening in the Gulf, while other things behind the scenes are happening, and they're not telling them the real issues and what's going on, especially about capping the well and what that's doing. And he's asked a series of questions in this article, and he gives some short answers. And I'd just like to read maybe 3 or 4 questions to you and his responses on whether the well pressure should be a concern. No, he says, it's a total diversion. That's the gas condensation that was trapped in the drilling riser, which blew off the wellhead on April 20th. Okay, it's a mile-long compressed natural gas. What we don't know anything about is the open hole which it caused by the drill bit when it tossed the blowout preventer way out of the hole, and 120,000 minimum barrels a day of toxins and poisons covered the floor of the Gulf of Mexico. So what they're talking about is the biggest environmental crisis cover-up ever, he says. And they knew that that well riser would finally deplete. Okay, and what he's saying is that with the oil gushing out of there, the riser, okay, would eventually disintegrate, okay, and then they could say it's over. And unfortunately, we have now killed the Gulf of Mexico. Some 5 to 10 miles away is what the NOIA research vessels have now proved is a deep oil lake that is growing by the day, and it's very toxic oil, and its gases are very lethal. Basically, if we have a hurricane now, we could have to evacuate the Gulf Coast, he says. Another question on the financial implications of BP. When people find out, first of all, let me back up. I favorited a video, maybe 3 or 4 down on my favorites on my channel, Pip Tac 101, and it's talking about one of, it's BP's community liaison. She talks about getting her family out and why she's eventually going to leave here shortly. And that plays in with what he's saying. On the financial implications of BP. When people find out the magnitude of the story, when people find out eventually, I don't know if we can technically clean up the Gulf, but it would cost over $1 trillion. Simmons on his reaction to the rig explosion. First of all, when I woke up, when my wife turned on the TV at 7 a.m. on the 21st, I saw this shocking news that one of the greatest deepwater rigs ever built by one of the great companies in the industry, Transocean, was in the middle of this terrible fire. And then they said this was a rig fire. This is a fuel on the rig. I know that there was 700 gallons of diesel fuel on the rig. I said, this is a lie. The Gulf of Mexico is on fire. Why are they saying this? Okay, these are his quotes. For 2 days they kept saying it's a rig fire. When the rig sank, they could no longer call it a rig fire. It's the riser leak because they said the truth. Because if they said the truth, they would go to jail. On whether another question on whether the blame lies squarely with BP. I think Transocean and needs congressional medals of hero for this. I am really disgusted. Other than John Hofmeister, the retired president of Shell America, he's the only other person that is speaking out on this issue, he says. And then another question is why he's shorting the BP stock. And he says everybody else he knows is putting in buys. And he says that's ridiculous. He says I'm gonna short them. I have never shorted a stock in my life, but I'm gonna do it now. And then the last question on whether there is hope for a permanent solution now that the oil has stopped leaking. Okay, no, because that's not the gusher. That was a little bit of condensation that would have ended anyways. there's no way to fix the gusher because there's no casing left in the hole other than doing a small diameter nuclear bomb. It's the only way. With no casing left in the hole, the odds of the relief well working are 0. Okay, what the relief wells do, if they can find the casing, then they cut a 4-inch hole, and then they have something to capture the mud with. With no casing there, it's like pouring oatmeal down a fire hydrant. The casing is not there. It's scattered over the ocean floor. Okay, the government now has gamma ray images of the actual blowout preventer, which is 5 stories high. The preventer is 5 stories high itself. That's 50 feet, guys, which weighs 325 tons, and it has 2 sections of casing that pierced through 5 stories of metal. Okay, so that tells you that some of the casing out of the well, okay, the bore, has shot up through the actual preventer. Okay, and with that much oil leaking out, under that much pressure, okay, what's left of that 24-inch casing is probably gone by now. And he says, yeah, that there's nothing left of the actual casing. And so to try and stop it, I mean, and he's talking about a lake that's 5 to 7 miles away on the bottom of the floor. So this isn't over yet, guys. I don't think it is. And you're talking about an expert in the industry. So anyway, I just thought I'd run that to you again. It's on zerohedge.com. And I don't know. Take care, guys. Heads up. And we'll talk to you later.